our publicly shared drafts of the strategy, completing our partner survey. It's been a full 12 months of consultations and revisions. And with over 700 organizations joining hands in the network, coming from different countries and different sectors, your collective input has ensured that the strategy really reflects the diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and local realities of this community. So now we want to start planning how we will achieve this together. And once again, we turn to you. We want your input again. So the aim of this session is to hear from you, our partners, on how we can work together to unlock the power of data. To rise to that challenge and opportunity of the moment, we need to be louder, we need to be more active together, we need a more energetic movement to both demand and create that world that we want to see. And we're hoping that you'll accompany us on that journey. And to kick us off on that journey, I would like to welcome Claire Melamed, CEO of the Global Partnership, to introduce the new strategy.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and thanks to all of your brilliant work also on the strategy over the last year. So, yeah, it's a funny moment in an organisation when you suddenly decide that you're going to produce a new strategy. It leads to kind of all sorts of existential questions about, you know, why are we here? What do we do? How do we create change? It's been a really exciting process, actually, and I think a moment to reflect on how far we've come, on, you know, to be proud of some of the successes, open about some of the challenges that we faced, and really take the opportunity to sort of react to the changing world. So the vision that we've set out in the strategy is, as it says here, of a world where data and technology are driving sustainable and equitable development. I think this has been the underlying principle of the partnership from the very beginning. But I think what came home to all of us who were involved in the strategy development as we began the process is the extent to which the opportunities of the different ways in which we can make that happen and the prize in front of us if we get it right are so much greater now than perhaps we realized when the partnership was set up in 2015. And that's partly because of the development of the community and our own understanding, and it's because of a lot of changes that have happened in the world out there. We still retain an absolute commitment to working to strengthen data for decision making, and the different ways in which data and the new technologies that run on data can revolutionize decision making, can help to give those who goes in positions of power, those who control resources, the understanding of the societies they lead at an incredibly granular and localized level in close to real time, and the way in which improved data, strengthened data systems can help to drive better decisions. But there's more than that now. And we all know, I think, how digital transformations are occurring so rapidly across different sectors, different parts of government. It's data that powers much of the opportunity of that digital transformation. And those data and those digital systems themselves create huge opportunities in the form of an almost continuous flow of data that can be then translated to improve services, to improve the allocation of resources, and so on. And then, of course, we've had lots of sessions that I know some have been standing room only on AI today in the festival already. And I think, you know, we're all incredibly aware of how some of these new technologies that have data as the absolute basis for their operation. Data is the raw material that feeds AI. Without AI, there could be no data. The new economic opportunities that are created by AI, but not only AI, by other technologies as well, rely on countries having effective, strong, well-governed data systems to underpin the economic growth that can result. And we all, I think, want to see those economic opportunities that come with data and new technologies shared widely across the world, across different groups of people, and we want to take this opportunity to build more equitable patterns of growth than we've seen in the past. So I think that while in many ways our vision since the last strategy is still, there's a strong through line, there hasn't been a sharp break. I think the breadth of our ambition has grown together with the breadth of our understanding about the different ways that data can create change in the world, can be a force for good in the world, can help to drive the progress that I think we all want. So it's this understanding of the increased power of data, the way that data can have a benefit across so many different areas of activity, of decision making in government, for companies, for individuals, that means that in this figure that I'm sure you will have seen quoted at you several times already today, the research that we did showed that when you look at the evidence from different studies and different sectors, on average, when you invest in data, for every dollar that's invested in data, you can expect a return of around $32. The benefits are huge, and that's because of this breadth of opportunity that data presents. So in this time, I think we're all too aware of scarce resources, growing challenges. It seems to me that it's really all of our challenge and our responsibility to use the best information that we have available to tackle the worst crises in the world. You know, I think we're all very aware sitting here that this is needed now more than ever, the challenges that we face in climate, in health, in almost every sector. So the question that we set ourselves as we started to work on this new strategy was, how is it that data, bearing in mind all of these opportunities that could be driven by data, all of these benefits that data can be delivered, what is it that we need to think about in terms of the data and the systems themselves to make sure that data and data systems and those people who produce, who manage, who analyze data are in the best possible position to do the most possible good in the world? There are three priorities that have really come from the work that we've done for several years now with all of you, that we understand are the sort of three key levers that we have to pull to affect the changes in data systems that will allow us to capture those benefits. The first is inclusion, and part of our ambition in this new strategy is about making inclusion the norm, that data needs to represent everyone if it's to serve everyone. And whether that's as the basis for good decision making that takes into account the situation, the interests, the concerns of all of the population, or whether that's powering the algorithms that feed AI so we don't end up with biased decision making, that the representation, inclusion in data is an absolutely critical thing for us to think about and work towards. And we need to think about both the methodologies and the processes that will help us to drive that inclusion. And lots of you, of course, I'm sure here in the room, have been involved over the last few years with the Inclusive Data Charter, or working together on citizen data, and making sure that the voices of communities are at the heart of decision making. And through this objective, we'll continue to work with those communities, scaling up and increasing our impact. The second thing that the network, the second thing characteristic that data needs to have if we are to reap the benefits that we know are there, is that it needs to be timely. That the data that we use, whether that again be to inform decision making, to power the technologies that data is feeding, is that it needs to reflect the world as it is, if it's going to be useful and lead to responsive decision making, responsive technologies. Of course, we've been working now for some years with the UN, with the World Bank and others on data for now. And I think we have a really great record there of driving more timely decision making in governments, particularly during COVID, capacity development, and so on. And we know, I think we have a really strong consensus within the network around the importance of timely data and a growing body of evidence on how to do that, and a growing confidence as we move towards that. The third characteristic that data needs to have if it is to drive the changes that we want is, and again this is the topic of many conversations in this conference and further afield, is that data needs to be accountable. That data, because of the power that it has, it's absolutely critical for something that is that powerful, that it's governed in a way which is accountable to the people that it's intended to benefit. There are more than 500 of our partners have contributed to the Data Values Manifesto. I've been talking today to some of the data values advocates who have been putting those principles into action in all kinds of exciting ways, changing hearts and minds in their communities and putting data values into practice. But increasingly in our community, it's not just the outcomes of data, it's not just the data itself, but it's the processes around how data is governed that we're interested in, that we're going to set ourselves the ambition of changing and improving over the next period to 2030. And through these three priorities, these three changes that we want to seek, we want to build a world where individuals, where companies and countries can mobilize the power of information to create the future that they want and that they need. Thank you. Right, Lucy has the long walk up to the stage now.
Next to each other. So we've talked a little bit about what we want to achieve together. And now we're going to focus on how we're going to get there. There's a lot to do to get to this point, which Claire has outlined. And we want to hear from you. So we're going to ask this question of you. How can the network increase the impact of your work? How can the network increase the impact of your work? And we'd love for you to share your thoughts or any other questions that you have at slido.com. And you'll have to put in this code, Strategy 2024, to be able to submit a question, a comment, and also vote on the ones that others are submitting as well. But I'm excited to now pass over to Claire, who's going to facilitate a panel of some of our board members, our key partners, to hear a bit about the different roles that we can be playing together to start working towards this ambitious vision. So please do join us on the stage. I'm going to come back to the Slido code in a second, but this is who we'll be speaking with now.
We want you very, very much, but we don't want you quite yet. We want you all alone on the stage.
Okay. Terrifying.
So thank you very much. You've heard from me about the what. You've heard from me about what it is we're trying to achieve. But now I feel, because we're a network, we don't really achieve, nothing that we achieve is achieved on our own. So it would be completely wrong for me to tell you how we're going to do it without asking our partners to tell us how they would like us to do it and what they think we should be doing, because that really is the whole purpose of the network. So to have this discussion, and I very much hope that that we're going to have some contributions on the Slido soon. I want to talk about, we have these objectives that are collective objectives that we have, that have come about through the conversations with many of you. But in order to achieve those objectives, we have to find ways to work together. And we, through the different, through all of the experiences and interactions that we've had with all of you over the last few years, have really focused in on 3 roles that the partnership can play, which our partners have told us are the useful things that we can do to help to make your work more effective. And those 3 are, first of all, to help build coalitions, to build sustained political coalitions to support the stronger values-based data and technology systems that we, I think, all want to see. The second is as a learning convener, to mobilize the power of the network to deliver practical skills and new knowledge through the collective wisdom of the many partners in the network. And the third is as a solutions broker, that we believe very strongly through the network and the huge expertise that and the resources that exist in the network, that we can achieve change through catalyzing and fostering some of the national and regional data and technology partners. So I've invited the best possible panel of partners up on the stage to talk a little bit more about your experience and your advice to us in how we can affect change through all of those sectors. So let me start with you, with Aidan Eyakuze, the Executive Director of Twaweza, and ask you, Aidan, your role in Twaweza, you're a civil society organization, your business is advocacy, and you've been a long supporter and an observer of this data, the world of data. How do you think we can best go about working with the network to build the sustained political coalitions that we need to support the systems change that we're looking for?
Thank you very much, Claire. It's great to be on this panel, and I just want to really congratulate the team for putting together a very beautifully written strategy. I've been reading lots of strategy documents, and many of them are dry and boring, but this one is really well put together. And the thing that really attracted me was, amongst many things, the power analysis that is inside there. And there are 4 dimensions of power, and I'm going to come to your question in a moment. The power to act, the power over people to compel them to behave in particular ways, the power through an activity or a channel, which is instrumental. But then I think the most important power there is the power of collaboration. I think that one of the most important things to realize is that what is the point of all of these things that we're doing? What is the purpose for it? And again, I come back to the very sobering statistic from the SDG, from the UN meeting in September, which says we're only 15% on track on the SDGs. That is a very sobering fact, and I think that is a purpose for which we really should pull ourselves together in order to make that achievement. And this is a political process, really. It's not a technical process. This is us sitting together and realizing and agreeing that we need to work together to achieve these collective goals. And the only way you can achieve sort of political success is through collaboration. It is through bringing people together who sometimes may not agree on methods, but hopefully we are agreeing on the direction we want to travel and the destination we want to arrive at. And one of the things about data is that it can help us have a shared view of the world, right? We can say, yes, this is what the reality is. We don't accept it. We want to do much better. And so convening what the network, actually, I think to my mind, it started as a small-ish network. I think the number I remember first was about 350 partners from around the world. I think it's doubled at least in size to maybe 700 or 800. It's growing. And so I would argue that we need to be more than a network, but more of a movement, and bring a lot more people into this broad tent of driving this agenda for improving the lives of many people. And I think one of the areas which is, again, one of my really passionate dimensions of the work that I do, is actually hearing the voices. You made the important point about inclusion. One of the features of data really needs to be inclusive. And citizens want to be included in a meaningful way in how they are viewed, how they are measured is not the word. Do we measure ourselves? How we're included in the processes, in the plans, and the activities that are meant for our own welfare. And this, including citizens and how we see the world, how we prefer it, what the priorities are, is really very vital. So that's one convening that I think can sometimes be tough to achieve. Sometimes governments or even private sector, civil society don't always agree, but I think this is the kind of coalition, our ambition really needs to forge a much tighter coalition amongst these 3 or 4 entities in order to be able to achieve this important goal.
There's a really interesting question here before I let you go, Aidan, and turn to the other colleagues here on the stage. There's a really interesting question here. Somebody has asked, there are no names on here, but someone has asked, has said there are lots of civil society alliances. What does the global partnership offer that is different to them for their role in building coalitions?
Okay, one of the things that civil society alliances I think can be a little bit weak as is actually talking outside of the civil society bubble. We can talk a lot to each other, and we will agree, we will commiserate together on how terrible the state of affairs is, right? But we need to be so much better at talking to private sector. We're not really very good at that. We need to be so much better at persuading governments also to see the world, to jump onto the bandwagon, our mission bandwagon, which sometimes governments say, no, I've got a politically mandated activity that I need to do. Your mission is not necessarily what I'm important. So this network is a great place to actually have that conversation. I know from my own experience, meeting very different people at this festival already. I was meeting people who are artists, people who are, designing beautiful representations of data. I think civil society, in order to be able to compel, to persuade, we also need to be better at listening and at talking to people outside of our own civil society networks and coalitions.
Thank you, Aidan. Right, there's some fantastic, really interesting questions and comments coming through. A lot of the questions that we have here are around capacity building, and a lot of the comments just sort of reiterate the importance of that. So I'm going to turn now to you, Tobias Otis Peña Rivera, who is the Director General of the Statistics Office in the Dominican Republic. And just, one of the other roles that I think we increasingly are playing, and the kind of one of the things that partners want us to do more and more, is to convene around learning, both kind of specific, dedicated skill sharing and training, but also the kind of learning that happens just through the cross-fertilization of ideas between organizations in the network, the kind of thing that Aidan was talking about. So just great to hear from you in your role driving a national statistics office and a broader statistics system. What is the role, the place of learning in your strategy, and the role of a network like the Global Partnership? And what's the value of what we can offer to you?
Okay, thank you, Claire. I don't know if you can switch in Spanish, because I don't see you that you have a... okay, okay, okay.
If others need, if you need, just run out and get...
Yeah, because I'm going to switch to the Spanish, so it is... Posible, wait for you. Yes. Bueno,
well, first of all, let me thank Global Partnership for this vision. And let me congratulate you for your strategy and for this vision that you're sharing. A world where data and technology drive sustainable and equitable development. But above all, because in your strategy, you are mentioning 3 objectives that I think that connect very well what's happening now with institutions such as the NSOs and the entire data ecosystem, and with the objective of making putting people in the center of data production and using that technology to improve their reality. How can we make the most of people's experience? to change the way we see reality, so that this may lead us to improve the relations in our national statistical systems that are used both by private and public sector, and to establish a co-governance. And certainly the issue here, there's a key word about learning, that is knowledge management. That is, how can we put together all the experience of all the agencies, the institutions and people? How can they be made available for decision making? And let me give you an example, because we came here and today we are in a way with global partnership and with the UN Statistical Division, we are working in a project for collaborative data. And specifically, we're working, we had a workshop to train people for the use of administrative registers, and we worked with the Civil Defense of Dominican Republic. We started working with them, and today, precisely in an earlier today, in a panel, we shared all our progress thanks to the fact that we shared knowledge, strengthened capacities. It is important to gradually strengthen all that. There are challenges related to governance, but I think that to the extent that as institutions we have a better understanding and a better knowledge of reality, if we get to know technologies better, to make them available, to improve statistics, to improve data, then we'll be able to have a more inclusive and sustainable world. That's, in the end, it's our target. So I want to thank Global Partnership for collaborating with us like this, but I also want to invite you to continue to work at this more in depth. The issue of artificial intelligence, all the technological breakthroughs that maybe the NSOs lag behind. Only through our interaction with civil society and the private sector, only then will we be able to take that quantitative and qualitative leap that we need to do our mission. Thank you.
So it is really interesting, and I think, you know, it's such an indicator of the world has changed. I remember when we started this, the work, the training and the capacity building that we were doing on things like geospatial data felt quite new and exciting. And now that is absolutely part of the furniture. And now we're all about AI and these sort of new skills. And it's incredible how fast the world moves and how fast we have to move to even try to keep up. And I think, you know, it's all credit to you and colleagues that, you know, for the sort of scope of the ambition, and it is a real honor to be able to be a part of that. There's just one, there's some really, as I say, there's lots of interesting questions here, but what I'm struck by the questions is that there's sort of questions, there's quite a lot of questions here on the slide about capacity building, both on some of the technical skills, but also on data communications. There's questions about advocacy. I wondered how much of the sort of the kind of skills, your skills agenda for your team is based around technical skills, and how much of the skills agenda is actually about those softer skills that your team and, you know, perhaps need to be able to engage politically, to speak, you know, to take part of these in these broader coalitions.
Yes, certainly, Claire. I joined the National Statistics Office 3 years ago. And one of the things that I learned about how to relate with the National Statistics System and the data ecosystem is that the first thing that I noticed was that I had good technical people. I had people that were technically very skilled, but we lacked leadership, because you need to have soft skills if you want to listen to other people. I always tell the teams that when they have to interact with other agencies, I always tell them, let's listen to put ourselves in their heads, because sometimes people tell you not what they have, but what they lack. So you have to be able to read between lines. So for that purpose, you need soft skills, and the national statistical offices now need communication skills. We need to be able to reach consensus. Just a while ago, our friend of the civil society was telling us that we bring people with different interests, but we need to reach consensus, and that's a skill. Because consensus will never be reached unless you have negotiation skills, for instance. And to admit that I'm not the owner of truth, we have a collective construction that you need to approach reality. And I think that's important. It's important for us to develop that in this network.
No, it's just fantastic to hear that, and so interesting. And I think this is part of the secret of the way that the community has moved so effectively over the last few years, is that engagement, that cross-fertilization ideas, leaders like you who are have that sort of breadth of ambition and understanding of the mission. So thank you. I think there are lots of questions here also about some of the kind of specific brokering that we do. So for that, let me turn to Mike Flanagan, who's here from our board, along with Aidan, and also from Microsoft. And one of the things that we do, that we've always done, and perhaps where we came from, the first thing that we did was our role as a solutions broker, working with countries and others to sort of put together the small mini partnerships that were offering the specific solutions to specific challenges. That's something that we very much want and need to continue to do, but of course, as with everything else, our ambition has grown and needs to continue to grow. So you've seen our work at close quarters for the whole of this period, Mike. So really keen to hear from you, kind of your reflections on how we've been playing your role and how you think we could be increasing our ambition, increasing our impact.
Well, I think that last part, Claire, around increasing impact is the point I'd want to focus on. If I think about my day job at Microsoft, I'm responsible for customer success. You wonder what does that mean exactly? We have customers who have business objectives, not technology objectives. They're trying to do something specific in their business, and they're trusting our technology to do that. But in the end, there are a lot of technologies that can accomplish the business objectives. What they're really looking for is a partner who can help them achieve the impact faster. They're looking for someone who can help them realize their business goal faster. And when I think about Aidan's comment on just how little progress we've made against the ambitions that we have by 2030, the question is, how do we accelerate impact? How do we step function change the way in which the activities that we're doing translate into impact for the world? And I think the way that we do that in technology, the way that I do that with my customers, is by finding a thing that works for one customer, finding the patterns of what work, and showing that to other customers so that they can use the same techniques, the same approaches, the same patterns to achieve their outcome faster than the first customer. And as you replicate that across tens and hundreds and thousands of customers, you're able to really accelerate the impact by learning things and sharing those learnings. And that's where I think the role of the partnership as a broker has the most opportunity for impact. As we replicate success, taking what you've done with the water information system in Paraguay as an example, how do you take the learnings from that so that the next country can accelerate their time to impact? And as you do that 10 times and 100 times, really finding the ability to dramatically accelerate the success will allow us to hopefully catch up on some of the lost progress.
Thank you. And actually, there's a question here to which you've answered really about how we can all benefit from the learning that's being gathered in individual countries. And I think a big part of our strategy is more investment in learning, not just these kind of specific skill sharing and brokered learning, but also thinking about how exactly we do that. How do we create those multiplier effects through online resources, through a sort of approach where we can cascade that learning through the network. And that's very much, again, a part of our ambition and what it is we are trying to do. So we have lots of great questions. There's one question specifically to you, Mike, about how your advice to other companies similar to Microsoft, or perhaps there's no company that's really that similar to Microsoft, but how is it that, what's your advice to companies who want to sort of more systematically work with partners in the network? The question asks, the question here is about whether we could develop, for example, a climate roster. And for me, that's the interesting thing there, is the way all of the different parts of our network chop up the world in different ways. So some people think that, you know, the challenge is climate. Other people think the challenge is timely data. And for, you know, for Microsoft, the issue might be the specific product. And I think, you know, one of the things that maybe we're trying to do sometimes is provide a bit of a translation service between those different ways of looking at the world. So interested in kind of how that looks from your point of view.
I guess I would start by saying I've never met a customer who is really excited for us to come and talk to them about our products. They're really excited to talk to us about their problems, and if our products can help solve their problem, then they're interested in listening more. So I would say, you know, it really has to start with what is the problem that you're able to help solve. As a provider of technology, it's clear to me, and I think clear to Microsoft, that data problems are multi-layered. There is, you know, the foundation of data, data collection, data ingestion, the speed of data, you know, real-time versus non-real-time data. There's a layer of data interpretation, data analysis, and there's a layer of data communication or data visualization. You know, and we've had some, Aidan, you mentioned some great art from data here at the festival. It's a multi-layered challenge, and all of the layers have to be solved ultimately in order for the result to happen. There are lots of technology providers who can provide the pieces and the parts. The question, I think, for any provider of technology is, can you help solve the problem that faces the business, the country, the organization? If you can help solve the problem, then I'm interested in understanding the parts of the solution. But all too often, I think technology providers show up with a set of parts and expect you to figure out how to put them together, when I think what we really need to accelerate impact here is focus on the problem and the parts that make up the solution.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the data community has sometimes also fallen into that trap. You know, here's a new platform, never mind whether there's actually the data to populate it. There's a question here, Aidan, that I'm going to somewhat paraphrase and then turn to you, which is a question about small organizations. And I think as a network, you know, we're always very aware that there's very differential capacity to engage in the network. And there is always, you know, if you're interested in achieving impact, there is always a temptation to work most with the biggest partners, with the ones who, you know, have the capacity and the resources to deliver. Whereas if we're interested in building a community, which we are as well, then we want to focus also on some of those smaller organizations and help to nurture the broader ecosystem. So I'm interested in any advice you have, any reflections on how to do that well, and in a way which sort of marries the immediate impact with the broader goals of building the ecosystem.
Thank you. That's a great question, and it's a fantastic challenge. And I think I'm going to borrow a little bit from Mike's example of solving the problem also of those smaller organizations. Many of them have a deep, granular understanding of the issues they're working on in this particular geographical area or specialty, but which they could use some assistance in perhaps amplifying their message, you know, or accessing additional information or data in order to make their work even more effective, or new techniques to achieve the same thing. So this is where larger organizations or better resourced organizations can really help to ramp up the effectiveness of smaller organizations. But we've got to be better at listening, at observing, at accompanying the smaller organizations in their own particular missions. The temptation often is to overwhelm them with our own view of the world, with our own latest tool, with our own latest whatever it is, and say, you do things like we do and you'll have this great impact. But I think we will lose out on really, back to the point you're making in your opening statement about the people-centeredness of the work that we're trying to do. And sometimes that can be overwhelmed if we are busy selling a particular solution which we may not have had the time to think about its relevance to the others. So one thing, I think, humility. It's important for big organizations to be humble enough to listen and to learn from the small organizations. Secondly is generosity also of our own techniques and sometimes our own resources in order to amplify that. And I think the third thing is alignment with their mission, with trying to make them as effective as they can. We do this over and over again. I think you can build very strong partnerships of people who are, there's a mutual trust, there's shared power there, and I think collectively we're able to achieve the impact.
Thank you. Oh, this is so frustrating. There were so many great questions here, but I'm being told that we have to stop. So I'm going to just cheat a little bit, colleagues, and invite all of you to just give me, this is the kind of thing that is great, moderators love and panelists hate, but anyway, I'm going to do it, and ask each of you to give me one word that you would like to sum up, that expresses your ambition for the partnership up to in the period between now and 2030. You look like you're ready, Miosotis.
Voy a tomar una palabra, generosidad.
Generosity.
Mine is political.
Perfect. That's exactly what I hope to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
really
Claire.
great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. We've certainly got a lot to start planning together. I was certainly taking furious notes, and I could see some of my other colleagues, especially working in the capacity building team, taking some notes as well. It's great to hear some consensus on some of our roles, but some diverse ideas about how we could be engaging with different actors as well. So we've heard from some of the questions you've raised. We've heard from our board members and some key partners who work in civil society and companies and governments. And we also want to know how the network strategy can support and be part of the political and international ecosystem. How can the global partnership have an impact globally? And we have a few speakers who will we're very thrilled to have with us to be able to share their reflections on how the network fits in and supports that global context and the work that they're doing as well. So first of all, I'm pleased to invite Isaac Alfie, Director of Planning and Budget Office of Uruguay, to the stage. Thank you, Isaac.
Okay, thanks. Thanks again. I will not prepare this part of the meeting, surely. But okay, I'm going to some words. Let me speak in Spanish in my own country, and for you will be better. Do my horrible English.
How can the network improve global impact? I think that, first of all, we need to give a step back. That step back implies is what we said earlier, what Claire said, and what Aidan said. Data is good to improve decisions, and enhancing decisions in the end will help us use the resources available to society more efficiently and hence to improve the quality of life. In the end, we are thinking above all in economic growth. And why do we need to economic growth, because that's a key issue. Societies are subject to tensions, huge tensions. Unless we have economic growth, governments that have a myriad of social demands are absolutely limited in terms of their actions. They lack the resources they need vis-à-vis the increasing number of social demands. And in the end, that will finally burst. It will burst or explode in society itself. And we've seen examples. We've seen many, many examples in the world. This has happened, and it's happening as we speak. So, governments are aware, or economists know, that the capacity to tax people is limited. After a certain time, you reach an extent where everybody agrees that taxes are bad, but at the beginning, initially, the benefit that spending, as you can use that money, it gives you more benefits. But you reach a moment when that doesn't happen. And if societies get stagnant, the only way you can meet the demands, social demands, or promote equality is by raising taxes. And in the end, everything turns into a boomerang and goes against society itself. Therefore, when we speak of the network and collaboration and partnerships in providing data and how to cooperate in terms of sharing experience between the public and the private sector, Mike just mentioned that he was a service provider. Well, that's the role of the private sector, to provide services the best way possible, and I'm sure they do it the best way they can with the current technology available. We are always going to see someone coming and doing things better. That's for certain. Now, sharing that and saving the people that are coming, showing them the good experiences and those that have failed, and to share with civil society their needs, and showing the way to see where we should target data production and research, and to share with the public sector not just their experiences but also their outcomes and also their needs, so that when they deliver services and goods, they may be as satisfactory as possible considering the needs at the time. So that is the path that we should take. Of course, the endpoint is, as people have already mentioned, we want societies, I wouldn't say more equitable, but I mean, by more equitable, I mean more harmonic. But because equality, human beings will never be absolutely equal. We're all different. We have different tastes. We see things. We have different concepts, different notions, and societies are not the same. From a cultural point of view, we don't share the notions of what is equal and what is not. So that is not something that we can impose to people. By no means. But we must give people the resources and we must give them the knowledge so that each society, based on their culture, their tradition, and their history, will use that, will use the data and the information to whatever they decide to do with it. And how can you do that? Well, basically, you can do that by sharing, collaborating, and this type of meetings, this is very large, but of course there may be much smaller meetings of specific groups, more niche things, or specific countries or specific regions. These are the proper forum for exchanging ideas and for learning. Sometimes people think that these events are not so important. But those of us that have a lot of experience, we know how to understand things and we know how to make the most thing. It's true. Sometimes you're missing, you're dedicating one day, but if you go home with one or two messages, that is enough to improve your work. From my current, in my current position, to improve my job, my work in the public sector, from the point of view of the civil society, to improve their task in the areas of influence for businesses, they can improve the way they work. So we can all improve something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac Alfie. We're grateful to hear your insights from the region and country who are hosting us all this week. Next, I'm pleased to invite Ambassador Faye O'Connor, UK Ambassador to Uruguay, to share her thoughts from the perspective of the UK government. Thank you so much, Faye.
Thank you very much. As you'll have noticed, I was so enthusiastic to be here that I've already been on the stage once this afternoon. I actually ran here from a meeting with Carolina Cosse, who is currently Mayor of Montevideo, and she was talking about what Montevideo had been doing underneath her management for the last 4 years. And I was really struck by the prominence and the preeminence of data in all that she was doing to try to make evidence-based policy making. So I think, a very live example of just what some of this stuff means in the real world. But I wanted to speak a little bit on behalf of the UK government, of course. First of all, it's an absolute honour to be here with Isaac Alfie, with John Tanui, with our friends from the Global Partnership. I had the dubious honour of being our development counsellor in the United Nations in New York from 2016 to 2019. And so we were very preoccupied with what the Global Partnership would do and how it could really add to the party. So delighted to be here supporting them. Look, the FCDO, the British government, recognises data as one of its most important assets, and it's an essential diplomatic and development tool. We aim to put high-quality evidence analysis and insights at the centre of our data-informed policy, programming and decision-making. But why do we do this? Well, first, we really feel that we need data to help us make sense of a rapidly changing global context. And data itself is part of the solution to trying to make sense of our environment, but it's also part of the challenge as well, as any of you who've suffered under a flood of information every day will lay testament to. So a new problem, but also an old one. I'd just like to quote British mathematician Lord Kelvin, who said way back in the middle of the 19th century, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I think that is absolutely key. Without data, we are simply guessing as to what we are doing and what will work and what does not work. There's a saying here in Uruguay, el dato mata relato, which basically means data overrules all manner of hearsay, personal experiences, etc. And it's a point well made. In establishing the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, I was so proud that countries collectively recognised the importance of ending poverty, tackling climate change, and ensuring that no one was left behind. Yet 8 years on, as Aidan has said, only 15% of the goal targets are on track. And sadly, the data suggests that nearly 40% are stalled or going backwards. But we only know this because we use data to track the progress. When we scratch beneath the headlines and the averages, there are also gaps in that picture. All too often, the data we're using to measure the SDGs is several years old. Too many SDGs have minimal global coverage, and millions of people are still not included. So to understand progress, we really need timely and relevant data. To understand where we need to focus our efforts to maximise impact, we need data to be inclusive of everyone, including those most in danger of being ignored by development initiatives. And to understand whether our policies and programmes are effective, we also need data. Data can and should support better delivery in every sector. The Global Partnership's new strategy speaks directly to these needs, and it looks set to bring more organisations together to improve the quality and availability of data and support and use it to leverage better results for the SDGs. I was delighted to see your growth over the past 8 years to up to 700 partners, I think it is now. It's an absolute testimony to the value of what you're trying to do and the value of data. We also think your new strategy is ambitious. It embraces the breadth of data, which touches every aspect of life. It seeks to bring together expertise of traditional actors like the British government, along with the private sector, smaller organisations and citizens. Valuable perspectives, including from those most marginalised in society, must be reflected in all of our data. And citizens need to be supported to use the data to their own benefit, which helps them to hold governments to account. So that's really the one thing I wanted to leave with you from the perspective of the British government, is that we are a government that is keen to be inclusive, and we are a government that is keen to be held to account. It is very easy in big multilateral forums for governments to make promises and commit to do things. It is much harder to do them, and we need the data to tell us where we are going right and where we are going wrong. So the United Kingdom commits to being a core funder of the global partnership as you launch your new strategy, and we really look forward to seeing how all your global partners will use data to drive positive change. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ambassador O'Connor, for your reflections, but also the UK's continued collaboration on our shared mission. We were hoping to have one more speaker, James Muhati, Principal Secretary of State, Department of the Republic of Kenya, but we believe he's one of those people that is still stuck on a very long journey here after some delays. So instead, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and for your inputs into the session today, but also your many inputs over the last 12 months into the strategy, and turned over to Claire Melamed for her final thoughts on what we need to do now. You can find our strategy and continue to reflect on it and talk amongst the Global Partnership team this week about it on our website and also through these codes here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you to everybody. This has been such a great session, really, really interesting discussions. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of our fantastic board members who've helped us to present, who've helped us to shape the strategy, our funders, of course, and all of you who are here and all the several hundred people in other sessions scattered throughout this building. I think we had a great judging from the number of questions we had on the Slido, we also had a fantastic online presence for this session. So thank you, especially those of you who are watching around the world. We're really excited to work on this together. Obviously, as you'll see, we're not lacking in ambition, but I firmly think that that's a good thing. We're building very confidently, I think, on firm foundations. If you want to find out more, if you want to chat to somebody in more detail about the strategy, we have a booth over just in the foyer out there, where we also invite you to leave us some information about reflecting on what you've heard and where you think you can fit in, and what parts of this strategy resonate most with your organisation. So thank you very, very much. I believe that is the end, not just of this session, but also of the festival agenda for the day. So thank you all for a fantastic first day, and wishing you a lovely evening, and see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you.